Meeting to order.
Thank you very much. We're going to do a roll call for the Wednesday, November 2nd, 2016 Ann Arbor Downtown Development Authority meeting. Saba Leskaj, Bara, Bob Gunzel.
Here.
Marie Clough. Here. Howard Lazarus.
Here.
Joan Lowenstein.
Here.
Darren McKinnon.
Present.
Al McWilliams.
Here.
John Mowat.
Here.
Rashida Ryan.
Here.
Keith Orr. John Swift.
Here.
Phil Weiss.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right. First up is audience participation. Well, actually, first up, I would just like to point out my gavel.
Yes.
Oh.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Audience participation. Ray Detter, you're up first. 4 minutes.
A group of 13 downtown and near downtown neighbors gathered together at my house last night for a discussion of some of the many issues currently important for the future of downtown Ann Arbor. We started out by reaffirming our support for the Southeast Michigan Rapid Transit Initiative in the village. Although no vote was taken on that last night, those present seemed to support the possibility of a new Amtrak railroad station with federal environmental approval, of course, and with the cooperation of DTE being in the area near the existing depot station. With rail service at Depot, commuter service at Depot, but also a commuter platform in the Fuller Street area. And there's at least some people on the university group who feel that that is a definite possibility, a positive. In spite of many setbacks, this last month, we still support residential housing on the YMCA site. And looking at the nature of the buildings that are being built on South University, and also the office building, which is going at 313, 315, 317 South Main, we're not opposed to that project. So what we're trying to do is to make them as good as they can possibly be. An installation also of a wall last night came up behind the core development, 603 East Huron, because that is also core as well as the library lot site. And what we want is a wall that extends all the way from that site all the way to State Street in order to protect the houses which are on Ann Street, which are historic, and some of them owner occupied. But much of our meeting was devoted to a discussion of issues relating to the core proposal on the library lot. As a group, we do not oppose the core proposal for a mixed-use hotel residential development on the library site, but last night's discussion supports the position communicated to City Council by the Downtown Area Citizens Advisory Council last August. We don't want anything to be built on that library lot until the community completes a public examination of the possibilities to connect that block to related concerns in the area. We now have a 12,000 square foot plaza as a requirement. The details of how that plaza is to function as a cooperative public-private open space need to be clearly identified and agreed upon. We also want whatever goes on the library block to consider the possibilities of connecting to and improving Liberty Plaza and cooperating with First Martin on whatever they hope to develop on their sites. Plans must relate and connect to the Blake Transit Center and the former YMCA site. They must avoid negative impact on nearby residential and historic properties, and clearly benefit the continued operation of the district library on the block. We should even be thinking of the way in which development of the library block will eventually connect to and relate to future plans for development of the nearby Allen Creek Greenway. What we don't want to do is to approve the biggest and most expensive mixed-use building construction by the highest bidder. We want the best project we can get on that particular site. But last night we spent a lot of time, more than I expected, discussing an issue that was raised about whether or not the initial bonding process for the underground parking structure would permit the city to legally approve agreeing, working with CORE on a private development of the library parking structure site. And I'm not going to get into that in detail because it's very complicated and perhaps you've already taken a look into it. But nonetheless, we hope that this issue will be definitively decided by a public announcement of our city council and also our city attorney before we move forward on any agreement. If it's out there, let's make clear that it is legal and that all of us have looked into it before we move further with regard to these discussions. It's been raised over the course of the last several years again and again. Last night it was raised at our meeting, and we don't want to keep going over it again and again. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Next up, Marianne James from the Arbor.
visual aids. And Charlotte's going to put them up over there. So on behalf of the ARC, thank you for the opportunity to be here today and to apply for a DDA grant. The ARC is requesting DDA support for one portion of a major initiative that will expand the ARC's impact in downtown Ann Arbor for decades to come. This $3.1 million overall initiative has two components. First, the purchase of the ARC's music venue on Main Street, which assures the long-term security and provides new capacity to expand programming in the venue. Second, a master plan for renovations that provides for improvements to the facility to accommodate those new programs while making the venue more welcoming and relevant to current and future audiences. To date, we've raised over $2.6 million, enough to pay off our mortgage and fund the first phase of renovations, which will begin in December and focuses on the concessions and photo gallery. We invite the DDA to support the next major phase of renovations, the ARC's facade and entryway. Most of you were here last year when we applied for DDA funding for this same project. That application focused largely on how the entryway project relates to the DDA's development plan and to criteria outlined in the grant guidelines, such as enhancing the pedestrian experience by creating pedestrian interest and amenity, improving the streetscape and adding to the visual life of the neighborhood, reinforcing the ARC as a key element of downtown Ann Arbor's unique identity, and highlighting the mix of downtown users and uses. You can see many of those factors in play in the renderings. While those factors are still important and relevant, we're eager to share more about the expanded programming that this initiative supports and what we've learned in the past year. We've long believed that the daytime availability of a 400-seat venue in the heart of downtown Ann Arbor is a significant untapped resource. Over the past year, we've tested that theory by piloting several daytime events and programs, including hosting two-day business conferences, one for Duo Security and the second for the Intermittent Technology Consortium. We presented a field trip concert on American history and cultural diversity to students from 5 Detroit area schools. We also hosted 3 Celebration of Life memorial services. Hosting an ongoing weekly non-denominational meditation sitting has been an ongoing project as well. With the exception of the weekly meditation, each event had between 200 and 300 participants. Feedback on the ARC as a host was excellent. Per the Ann Arbor Area Community Foundation's recent Arts and Economic Prosperity Study, offering 4 such programs at the ARC each month would generate additional participant spending of $300,000 to $500,000 annually at other downtown businesses. We're excited to complete the ARC's master plan for renovations and turn our attention to further developing daytime programs that meet community needs and enhance our downtown economy. The entryway project is a key component to our plan's overall impact. With an estimated cost of $275,000, we invite the DDA to help make this project a reality with a commitment of $100,000, which could be payable over 2 to 3 years. A commitment from the DDA would help the ARC leverage other public and private support to fully fund the project, including an application to the MCACA in June of 2017. The ARC would be honored to publicly recognize the DDA's support alongside other donors such as Ford Motor Company, DTE Energy, the Towsley Foundation, the Buer Foundation, and many community supporters. We look forward to submitting a full proposal and we'll be happy to answer any questions or have further discussion along the way. Thank you for your consideration.
4, 3, 2, 1. Great timing. Next up, we have Mr. Omari Rush from the Ann Arbor Arts Center.
Good afternoon. In 1975, the Ann Arbor Art Association bid a whopping $100 over the $79,000 bidding price to purchase the downtown Ann Arbor building at 117 West Liberty Street. Formerly the home for carriage and furniture retail, and formerly a facility for undertakers and seers, it has most recently existed for 41 years, but for the community, as the home of the Ann Arbor Art Center. Its distinguished and flagged facade have provided a visual landmark in downtown Ann Arbor, and residents and visitors still tap the building's legacy of retail to buy art for themselves, their friends, and family. as an art center. Additionally, the public has used our building for exhibitions, classes, summer camps, and for peeking at creativity through our storefront windows. We've also been particularly honored when families have chosen to use our building for weddings, memorial services, and other major life commemorations. These activities pack our building day to day throughout the year with people of all ages and backgrounds. In recent months, we've waitlisted over 240 students, and class enrollment has increased over 42%. In the past 2 years, we've supported the sale of local artists' artwork more than ever before. We're selling a lot of art. And it's not uncommon to hear staff arguing in the hallways about who gets priority use of certain spaces in the building. At the same time, Ann Arbor is growing and downtown is booming. Given these things, more and more, we've relied on spaces outside of our building. We've relied on spaces outside of our building to meet the community's growing demand for our services and programs. Whether that's using Hathaway's Hideaway for additional class space, hosting outdoor arts festivals, or growing our exhibition program in public spaces beyond our four walls. The bottom line is that we need more space and we need better utilization of our existing space. Working with architects and designers, we're coming up with ideas and possibilities for meeting these community demands. For instance, remodeling the interior space of our 3-story Liberty Street facing building, adding 3 additional floors to our adjoining Ashley Street facing building, and researching public-private partnerships to facilitate expansion into other downtown spaces. With these kinds of developments and improvements, we can imagine having a wide open first floor storefront space that piques pedestrian curiosity. We can imagine bustling activity and new studio spaces used for art-infused birthday parties and bachelorette parties. And we can imagine exterior art installations that would enhance the building as a beacon embodying and reflecting the creative spirit of Ann Arbor. In short, the building would be even more alive with the activities and energy we've become known for making available to the community for over 107 years. To make any of our expansion ideas realities, and we're busy making sure to evaluate all options, we'll be seeking support from a variety of community partners. And in that work, we look forward to partnering with the DDA so that we can grow with downtown and have an opportunity to continue being, for the community, an arts and culture anchor and a model of vibrancy. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, Amari. Next up, we have reports from city boards and commissions. We don't have anybody on that, so we'll move on. Next item, DDA member communications. I'll kick it off by welcoming our newest board member, Sava Lelkaj, who could not be here today because it's the grand opening of her Babo restaurant store. So, we are excited to have her on the board and understand this was a big day. So sometimes DDA meetings don't land on the best day, but we're excited to fill out the board again and move on. Anybody else have anything?
I do. So in light of the comments from Amari Rush, I would like to disclose that I'm the executive director of the Ann Arbor Art Center, and I will be recusing myself from any conversations related to that.
Good to know. Anybody else? All right. Executive Director Communications.
So I'm reminding you of 2 dates, or at least making sure it's on your calendar. The first is we're going to have a DDA retreat on November 15th. That's a Tuesday in the afternoon, 1 to 5. We'll be at the Residence Inn, that's the new hotel on 120 West Huron. And we have a work session with City Council. It's the second Monday in January, January 9th. It'll be 7 o'clock. We've secured the CTN studio so we can have the board members and the City Council members sitting at the same table. And both sessions are going to cover very similar things. So those in the public that are listening to this, we're going to include in both sessions discussions of the DDA and city parking agreement and changes we might want to make, particularly in light of some of the trend data we're seeing downtown. We are going to talk about the city and the DDA coordination on CIP projects, or projects that are in the CIP rather, including some potential partnerships down the road. For instance, a topic under review at the city right now, or under study, is the Allen Creek corridor. That might be something we can work with the city on. And then finally, in light of recent events around the old Y lot, otherwise known as 350 South 5th, we may also have a dialogue around the Connecting William Street plan that we worked on. There's a lot of content in that plan that I think is worthy of being brought back for discussion. So again, those 2 meetings are on your calendars, more as they become available. I'm grateful to all of you for making time. Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. All right, next up we have approval of minutes. Do I hear?
So moved.
Thank you. All right. Anybody have any issues with the minutes as reported? I was not there, so I'll have to defer to other people. All right. Can I have, seeing none, can I have a vote?
Move to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Can I move to approve the minutes? I knew it.
Second.
Thank you. So, can I hear ayes?
Aye.
Nays? All right. Approvals, minutes are approved. Next up is Partnership Committee, Joan and Al.
Can I take this one, Joan?
I think you can handle it.
All right. Let me find my sheet. Hold on. Here it is. Here we go. The Partnerships Committee did not meet in October. Next Partnerships meeting, Wednesday, November 9th at 9 a.m. with partners.
Do you have more to say? No?
That's
Okay.
what
All right. Capital Improvements Committee meeting, or committee, John?
Bet you'd like me to be as brief as that.
No, I would not expect that, John. I would not expect that.
We met a lot. Yeah, we've had a couple of meetings in the last month. And I think we've got a presentation teed up about Fifth and Detroit, so maybe without further ado, we can just sort of dive into that, and I can bring you up to date on the various projects as we go. This is Bob Doyle from Smith Group JJR. He's been our point person and working with the design team on this project and doing an excellent job.
And thank you for giving us a few minutes today. We want to give an update on the pilot project at Fifth and Detroit. It's been going on for a few weeks now. We still have a little bit of time left, but we have some initial observations to share today. So for those of you in the room or at home who aren't familiar with the project, just to give you a brief overview, the core of the project area is on 5th and Detroit between Kingsley and Catherine. It's a collaborative project between the city and the DDA. The city is focusing on reconstructing the roads and replacing utilities, and we are focusing primarily on restoring the historic brick and the streetscape enhancements, but doing so in coordination. And at the start of this project, as we started talking to people about what we were doing, one of the key issues that we started hearing again and again was a concern about safety, particularly for cyclists and pedestrians crossing Fifth Avenue. And as a DDA, we recognize that everyone who comes downtown is a pedestrian at some point in their experience here. And making sure that they feel safe and comfortable is really important for a vital downtown and meeting our mission. And the city certainly shares those safety goals as well. So very early on, this became one of our priority goals. Addressing these issues became a priority goal for this project. And one of the initial ideas for a creative solution to address some of these concerns was taking down a segment of Fifth Avenue to one lane. And some of the benefits of this you see on the screen are shorter pedestrian crossings, making it more apparent to cars that they should be stopping for pedestrians, trying to slow travel speeds. And at your spaces, you have a handout that we referred to at our last CIC meeting that talks about the relationship between travel speeds and safety and the visibility of pedestrians.
You want to say what that is for the home view?
Sure. The source is from the NACDO guidelines, and it speaks to how as car speed picks up, the visibility and the risk to the pedestrian, well, the visibility to the pedestrian decreases and the risk increases.
Are there some key speeds? I'm sorry, key speeds?
Sure. So some of the key speeds start about 20 miles per hour is when we start to see that risk increase. And one of the concerns that we heard as we were discussing the pilot was an impact to traffic flow. So we wanted to pilot it. And that was really the impetus for what you see on the street. So just some of the details. With a one lane, we are able to have a shorter crossing distance, about 21 feet. We can get a little more sidewalk space on 5th Avenue. We also have space to buffer the bike lane from cars, traffic, and parking. And what that means is on either side of the bike lane, we have a few feet, it can even just be paint, but a few feet to give some buffer to the cyclist in that bike lane. And then with 2 lanes, we have a little bit longer crossing distance, about 28 feet. We have about the same amount of sidewalk width. We may be able to gain a little bit more. And we can still accommodate the bike lane, but we don't have space for buffers. We do, however, with the 2 travel lanes, have more capacity for vehicles on the road.
So we initiated a traffic study of 5th Avenue this year, and the early modeling of the traffic indicated that 1 lane of traffic may be adequate without significantly impacting traffic capacity on the street. But in order to really understand how it impacts the city street system systemically, and to really understand the potential benefits from a pedestrian standpoint, the decision was made to do a pilot study. And so the pilot study that you see on the street today reduces the traffic to 1 lane starting at Kingsley. It provides a buffered bike lane up against the curb in the green stripe, and then provides the same number of parking spaces as exists today on the street, but putting them next to the travel lane. And without marking new crosswalks in yellow, we're showing where proposed crosswalks would be within this type of scenario. And I will say at this point, this is one alternative out of a number of them, as Amber pointed out, that we're looking at, but it felt like the best one to model and see how it worked. So it's been in a couple weeks. How do I move this forward, Amber? We used temporary paint on the pavement, the orange typical cones, and then a portable curb, which is the white horizontal pieces that sit on the pavement with the vertical white markers. And city staff helped install this. We worked with the city engineering department in some detail to work out how it all fit together, and went in about, 2 weeks ago?
We're wrapping up the 3rd week.
Yeah, we're wrapping up the 3rd week right now. So you see the bike lane right up against the curb. The parking lane is in the distance behind it, and the single travel lane. And then right within the foreground of that upper picture is where we intended service vehicles to park and then continue to service the Carytown businesses. So what we've noticed anecdotally is increased compliance of stopping for pedestrians. So by virtue of the pedestrian being able to get into the right-of-way, if you will, closer to the vehicles, they're more likely to have eye contact with the driver. The driver's more likely to actually stop and allow the pedestrian to go. Traffic is moving slower through here, and that is critical, as Amber pointed out earlier. We are seeing some occasional congestion at 5th and Beeks during some morning rush hours, and then of course during the football traffic. And the placement of the bike lane requires some further review. We've seen some feedback some folks have said just keep the parking against the curb, put a buffered bike lane next to the traffic, and we've heard some people in support of the way it is today, and we'll be looking at that should this idea continue flow going further. And then lastly, community high school drop-off has been a little more congested and has actually added to the congestion on the street. We've done 2 now on the street interviews, if you will, with people passing by. We took a map out to the site, set up on an easel. We talked to business owners that were walking by. We've talked to people at the market. And we've talked to community high school students just to get their feedback on a perhaps subjective level. We are also doing some very objective measurements. We're taking new traffic counts, we're videotaping the traffic so that we can count the number of times cars are in compliance, pedestrians are in compliance, etc. But we thought it was also nice to get some, and helpful to get some subjective, person on the street interviews. And what we heard generally was that pedestrians feel a lot safer, that the traffic is very much more predictable, and that it stops more often. Drivers on the other side of the coin do feel a little more inconvenienced and are expressing some ambivalence about the potential trade-off. We heard specifically from a number of business owners who commented positively that they expected a more significant impact on traffic, and they're not seeing it to the extent that they expected to, and that they're not hearing a lot of concerns from customers. And that as people discuss it around Carytown and Zingerman's, it's not being viewed negatively. So they're hearing more positive comments than negative, and they're generally supportive of the pilot. At community high school, safety remains their top concern for their students, and if you've been by there at 11 o'clock when they break for lunch, you know why, because it's a flood of people coming across. We're working with them on various ideas within their property of how they drop off people from buses and how their parent drop-off works, because in order for the street to function well, no matter what configuration we have it in, we've got to coordinate with them and make sure that they're doing their part as well to keep their students safe and make it work. We have the video on here now, is it?
I think I have to make my way to it.
Okay.
Okay, this may take just a moment.
So we've taken some video before the pilot went in. We've taken video during the pilot. As the pilot wraps up in another week and a half, we're going to be downloading that and studying it in greater detail to look at it from a more data-driven perspective. But we thought it would be interesting to show you some of the results to date, because I think they're telling.
And one thing to help folks understand too is part of the design team are traffic engineers, and
Yes.
they're working with the city traffic engineers to sort of look at the same information and work through things.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yes.
I've heard from a couple of people that generally like the idea, but they are interested in maybe maintaining 2 lanes of traffic to provide future flexibility if there were to be 2-way traffic.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any thought about doing a pilot setup similar to what you have, only allowing for 2 lanes, still giving you the bump outs and other things that enhance pedestrian safety, but maintain 2 lanes of traffic?
That's a great question, mostly because I have a very good answer. That's that's next week.
Okay.
Actually, we're gonna allow 2 lanes of traffic, but keep the bump outs. So.
But Bob, Don't tell him anymore because he'll
Yeah.
have to come to the capital improvements committee.
Yeah.
To hear the whole.
Spoiler alert.
But Darren, we actually have had a lot of conversation about the idea of where to set curbs for not only that issue, but flexibility of drop-off lanes, parking, and bike lanes, and all those things are being looked at.
It really is the classic 5-pound bag, and we've got 10 pounds of potatoes, and we've got to figure out how to, make a healthy meal out of that.
It's a lot of potatoes for that meal.
Yeah. We might need some carrots.
We're going to show you 3 videos. Each of them is about 3 minutes long, so bear with us. It may get a little boring, but Bob's going to, he's going to walk you through it.
Good setup for him.
Yeah.
A little bit more. We need to work on that sales pitch, Amber.
Normally riveting.
So this
Pass
is
the potatoes around.
All right, turn signal's working.
This is Beeks and Fifth. Obviously, this is prior to the demonstration project going in, or the pilot. And so you can see generally a free flow of traffic. And what is interesting is that the city has done has a very sophisticated signalization process wherein as traffic comes up Beeks in flights and turns up Fifth, the light at Fifth and Kingsley is timed to let those flights through easily, or am I saying that wrong?
No, the lights leading up to Kingsley are all timed together, which is why you see the traffic all move in one group. But the light at Kingsley is not synced with this traffic.
Oh, it is?
Which is why, with the demonstration in place, we are starting to see some impacts, and we'll be tweaking that signal timing.
At Kingsley.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
It's a large percentage that are turning on Fifth.
Yes.
Which I find really interesting because I've told people I tend to go up to Fourth because if you're going to go south, the stop signs tend to be faster. So one thing that I think is going to be important in this, and I've urged folks, is rather than looking at, say, the first week's data, the last week's data might be interesting to see how behavior's been changed.
And this is the second week, because we haven't downloaded week 3 yet.
Right. So this is as people are starting to get used to it. And what you'll see is that the flight of cars is turning on to Fifth, and you're going to start to see a little bit of a backup then down Fifth
Because they get hit at
onto
Kingsley.
Beeks.
Well, not at Kingsley. We think it's actually because pedestrians are now crossing,
Right.
and so they're not able to make it through the green light.
We're gonna, that's happened, that's upcoming, the backup,
Yeah.
or we just can't see it.
It's coming.
Wait
Is-
for it.
Was there a
There
reason?
There it is.
Was there a reason for the camera change position?
No,
No, I
just
don't.
where they can put it.
Oh, okay.
What they were trying to do is capture more of the view down Beeks
Oh, I see.
to see the length of the queuing.
There's nobody in front of it, so it's so I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to tell why that car is
Somebody
stopped.
stopping.
Why is the car stopped?
We're assuming it's because.
That was me. I knew they were filming, so I just was trying to mess with it.
Now I know where to go do.
That is in the early morning rush,
A 2
a
second
little before
delay
8
there.
a.m.
Right.
And I drive this route every single day, and I can tell you that there's very little backup in between, say, 7:15 and 7:45.
Yeah, so what they
So-
tried to do was capture the worst of it so that you can see the contrast.
Yeah.
So this is just occasional.
I would dispute the statement that driver reaction has been ambivalent. The reactions I got have been slightly more emotional than ambivalent.
I would. Those were the people we talked to, but I'm sure you're getting the another cross section.
But I'll be honest, I haven't gotten any, in terms of volume, I haven't gotten any. And the positives have been more.
You've gotten positives too? Any positive from drivers?
Without doing a big scientific study, I would say the positives are more from people who are on foot and in the area, and the negatives are people who try to travel through the area.
So now
I would
we're
not
seeing-
dispute your anecdotal evidence.
Typically during the day, what happens, what we've noticed is that cars will queue up at Kingsley, but before they get, more than halfway down the block, the light releases them, and then that queue empties out while the next flight of cars comes up. So it's really during the critical peak hour that you're seeing that stacking.
Now you've sort of identified two possible things, though. One is the light at Kingsley, and the other is the pedestrian crossings. Amber, you mentioned that the backups we're seeing are not caused by the light, but by the pedestrian crossing.
That's some of the thinking, is that the cars are now stopping for pedestrians. So the pedestrian crossings are holding up the line to some degree, and then not all the cars can make it through in the green light.
Do we have a camera at there?
We're showing that to you next. So what we're doing.
This is awesome.
What we're doing for the rest of this week
I'm just saying.
is adjusting the signal at 5th and Kingsley to see if we can clear those cars in the green light.
Do you have any ideas though why? Because obviously, I don't know that we're increasing the number of pedestrian crossings from what happened previously.
I think the video will make that answer.
Yeah, you'll see it in the next one.
compliance
Okay.
is up, and also
Okay.
less space for vehicles to queue.
Got it. Okay.
You know how many sync up videos of multiple cameras at the same time?
So after
That's
I
next
haven't
meeting.
noticed, even
If
with
you were on the
traffic, I
CIC
think you might
committee,
appreciate it.
you'll see that.
Okay, so here
What do
is
you say about it?
the intersection at 5th and Detroit prior to the pilot.
Right. And so you see a couple of pedestrians waiting patiently at the marked crosswalk,
Yeah.
and you see one car stopping
Yep.
because they want to release the pedestrians to cross, and finally somebody in the other lane stops. And you see that quite a bit. That one car will stop, and then there's a lag between the next people are shamed to the point where they will also stop.
Yeah.
And obviously, that's pretty hazardous because there's uncertainty about what the second car might or might not do
Right.
in the crossing.
Right, exactly.
So
So
here's
here-
the pedestrians waiting,
Second example.
and they have to wait until the light is holding traffic to cross the street.
Right. As Amber pointed out, one of the distinctions to going down to one lane is that you have one less lane to queue people in. And so when they do stop, you've only got 5 or 6 car lengths back to Kingsley. But for the most part,
Got caught early.
the traffic is only stopping when it seems like there's an overwhelming need to.
So, and I'm assuming we're issuing tickets to all the people who didn't stop for the pedestrian, right? That going on.
Yeah, one thing I will just anecdotally share is that people who are complaining about having to be inconvenienced here are from the same neighborhoods who are complaining about not slowing traffic through their neighborhoods. So there's a perception as this not being a neighborhood street. And
Oh, interesting.
there's a certain, consistent with the conversation we had before.
Because it's always been a thoroughfare.
Right.
And I think it's also a matter of how they view it based on
That's how they get to work.
where they live versus where they travel.
Have there been a lot of accidents here?
We are going to pull that data.
Yeah, we haven't pulled that data yet, but that'll be part of the analysis.
And unfortunately, that clip cut short. So the last thing that you would have seen is a pedestrian walking not in the crosswalk, not caring that cars are coming, and cars not caring that the pedestrian is there, and it's a pretty close call.
Yeah.
So now we'll play after, or with the demo in place.
There's also a piece of video with a student from community high school coming in an angle from community high school to the Carrington shops. Obviously not in the crosswalk either.
And since it is,
So they're not at a. Oh, that's not the light.
yeah, the crosswalk is in where the Jeep was stopped, or where that truck is now stopped. And traffic is going through there slower, so it's more apparent that they should stop. So that's part of it, is the speed at which they're noticing the pedestrian.
There's that plus again.
And this is looking then from the another perspective.
What do you? So those yellow signs that you see at some crosswalks and not other
Yes.
crosswalks, those don't exist outside of this pilot, correct?
Yeah, there's some.
Are they there?
Not at that location.
No, that's what I'm saying. At this
ordinarily,
location, they're not
yeah,
there.
ordinarily at
So I'm
that
just saying, one variable that is in the mix here that is not been duplicated is actually, statistically speaking, you should either not include those or include those by themselves after the pilot's over to see if that slows down, because there is some perception of like crosswalks that have them you stop at and crosswalks you don't have them. You know, I mean, a lot of times I bet people are reminded they need to stop because of that.
And that's exactly what we're doing next week.
Right.
You wanna talk about that?
Yeah, so next week we are going back to 2 lanes of one-way traffic. We're going to be tweaking the signal timing to see if that can yield different results. And we're continuing to do public and stakeholder outreach about it. Like we said, this is the 1 lane is one alternative, and it will be evaluated with a number of other alternatives that we will bring to the CIC and to the board to review. And essentially what we're trying to do is balance the fact that this road, the street, does provide a significant access point into downtown for vehicles. At the same time, it's crossing through a very thriving, complicated, interesting neighborhood. And so how you balance those two and find the right solution is what we're after.
So I would say, when you say better results, I'm not sure what that means. Like, so how are you, are there quantifiable metrics where you
Yes.
know there's an improvement?
Yes,
And
we
that
have,
would require what?
we established ahead of time a series of 6 criteria under which to evaluate this. And so each of those is going to be measured. And so there are more measures than just are we moving traffic well.
I have to come to the CIC meeting
Yes,
with
you do.
Darren.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, if I could, if I could take a few minutes, have any of you been in that area either as a vehicle driver or as a pedestrian? I'd really welcome your input to this because I think it's a helpful opportunity for us to hear from your own experience. And I'm just going to leave it as an open question. How did you experience it as a pedestrian, or if you're a bicyclist or a car driver? What were your experiences?
Driving through there in a car at roughly lunch-ish time, to me it was, yes, it slowed me down, but I tend to be a lead foot anyway, but it provided some sense of order, like there wasn't any lane switching or which lane should I be in. It was just go here, and it, in some respects for me, made it simpler to get through there, and I didn't experience any traffic backup.
I felt like as a pedestrian, I really liked it. I'm usually in that area with my kids, so that was that was a big benefit. And then as a driver, leaving there, it was confusing. But I think, and I shared this with some of you, I think it's just because there's sticks right now, and so you kind of see through them, and you're used to something. So I felt like it didn't accurately funnel me. So I wonder if people feel like me, if some of the slowdown and backup is due to confusion to some degree, like what is this and where am I supposed to go? Because I usually go here. I don't know how you remedy that with the real world when it gets set up. Is it actually like X% faster because it's less confusion? I'm not 100% sure, but I agree. I didn't think it was like a huge problem. Other than I knew about it and I still wasn't 100% sure what.
Yeah, I had the same experience, and it didn't slow me up, but I was looking all over, trying to figure out what it was, and it certainly didn't slow me up that much.
Yeah.
Middle of the afternoon.
I've ridden my bike through there a number of times, and I feel less safe on my bike than when it was 2 lanes of traffic. I think the pedestrian interactions, even on a bike, is better because I can see them better. Because normally it's just kind of everyone's walking everywhere. But I feel safer with the traffic without the separated bike lane because I'm in the flow of traffic, and that's generally safer for me than going out of the flow and then trying to merge back into it afterwards. Especially after I've just made a left turn from a right-hand side of the road bike lane on Beeks, which is a challenge. And then getting in the right-hand bike lane that then goes into the protected bike lane that then comes out of the protected bike lane. And then Detroit Street's coming in on the right, and there's pedestrian driveway. It's just a lot of crossing that when I'm in the lane of traffic, I don't have to deal with. I can just ride in the lane of traffic. And right there, traffic's, even before the test, wasn't going that much faster than I'm going anyway. So yeah, I feel less safe on a bicycle there now than I did before.
Any other comments?
I guess one quick comment I'd make is that I think everyone's done a great job of sort of touching on a lot of the elements here. The one thing that I'd highlight a little bit more is one thing that's significant here are drop-offs and pickups for two things. One is for farmers market, that whole thing, and the other is for community high. And so that's something that's another part of the mix in all this, because obviously that's where you've got potentially cars pulling over and merging back into traffic and bike lanes and all the rest of it. So I think that's an important piece of this, and it kind of comes into play when we start looking at setting curb lines and having flexibility in time over the years, because things will change. And so I think that's one of the kind of key elements of this in my mind, is designing it in such a way that acknowledging that things are going to change and need to be flexible. So where those curb lines are set is important, but then bump outs may change, bike lanes may change. There's a lot of things that will in effect be a test for X number of years, and then it may change again. So if we design especially from the city's point of view, they're doing the street, so as long as the drainage systems and the curbs work, then that gives us some further flexibility in years to come.
I think there's some merit to the discussion, as we talked about before, that streets serve different functions based on day of the week and time of the day. And flexibility of design to allow inbound traffic at multiple lanes in the morning up till 9 o'clock, and then change the nature might be a good idea. Realizing that on Saturday morning, this is a place where pedestrians have priority, and design it that way. The other thing, just as an observation, which is when you make the left off of Beeks, lane markings don't really set you up to understand what's going on. And of course, you just swing out, come back, and that's something we ought to address. But I think, get to Al's point too, there's a problem with bike lanes that are not protected, just in that joint with delivery trucks, pulling as far over to the right as they can, and it creates a conflict. And I've seen that in the current pilot configuration. But I do think we ought to look at recognizing that, for the 2 hours a day, Monday through Friday, where we need to have the extra lane, we ought to be able to build that flexibility in, and then the rest of the time recognize it's a place where pedestrians have priority.
Anyone else have any comments, reactions about 5th and Detroit? All right. Moving on, Southview. The city is wrapping up their review of the project, and it should be out to bid this month, in the next week or two. Yeah? Good. Any issues about Southview? No? Huron Street. We appreciate folks coming along for the walkabout, looking at Huron Street, similar to what we've done in the past for Southview and 5th and Detroit, and getting people's observations and so forth. I think the significant thing there, obviously, is that it's all about transit and cars and what that means, and how MDOT factors into it, looking at vehicles. But having said that, again, these issues of pedestrian crossings, pedestrian safety comes into play very much so, and whether or not we have bicycle facilities or we don't, all those things come into play. And so, I think that as we start having those conversations, it's going to be how much do we prioritize in the right of way? Again, the sidewalk, bike lanes, landscaping, designated transit areas. Left turn, right turns, I think, are interesting because there's already somewhat limited curb cuts along there, and maybe there's some more curb cuts that could be eliminated, which would obviously reduce the amount of need for a left turn, right turn. So I think there's a lot of things to look at there. I think we all gave a lot of input for Amber, Bob, and the team to start thinking about. And I assume the next, you're sort of in the process of doing all the survey work, and we're going beyond.
Seeing them out there today.
Good. And where are we surveying from where to where? What street to what street on Huron?
Is it Don't Third or First?
I think it's first.
To State.
First to State. Okay. So it'll give us at least the rudimentary things to start working with from a design perspective. Anything else to add on Huron? No. I believe that is all I have. And our next meeting will be November 16th at 11 a.m.
Thank you, John. I believe we'll have a couple more members there.
Yeah.
I
Based
hope
off
so.
of the commentary today.
Come on, folks.
I would say,
around your vacation.
No, I would say that Al's comments regarding bike lanes are interesting and probably you should be at the next meeting.
Okay.
no pressure. Finance Committee, Marie.
So I would like to make a motion to move the resolution in the packet regarding the DDA audit.
Second. Support.
So Ms. Kasparek from Ring presented the fiscal year 2016 DDA audit. She reported that it was a clean audit. There were no material deficiencies. There were no errors or corrections. Everything looked great. Questions were asked. They were all answered to everyone's satisfaction. And the committee recommends the acceptance of the audit by the DDA board. Does anybody have any questions?
Anybody scrutinize that audit?
I do.
Yay.
All right, Howard.
I would ask that.
What packet are you looking at?
Just general comment.
Oh, general.
That there be some better variance analysis put here for things that are different. And that would just maybe a little bit better definition of what the variances are.
Okay.
And that would go for the quarterly reporting as well. It just helps rather than have to hunt through the
That's good. That's a good idea.
Got it.
Any other questions?
Any other discussion?
Nice job, Joe.
I got it. All those in favor of the resolution to pass the audit, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. Sorry, I blanked the first resolution. I was like, what if I say it? All right, back to you, Marie. Resolution passes.
Also in the Finance Committee meeting, we went through the first quarter financial statements. There's not a lot to do comparisons in the first quarter financial statements, so they're in the packet. It's too early to make any judgments, it's just a snapshot. So if there are any questions, Joe can assist.
We always look good in the first quarter because of football season.
And with that, the next Finance Committee meeting is Tuesday, November 29th at 1 p.m.
Great. Thanks, Marie. Next up is John Keith's not here, so John, you got double duty, Operations Committee.
Pages 29 through 32 in the packet are the monthly park and transportation report. Just like to highlight that the e-park machines, the 100 e-park machines which we've ordered will be coming in as well as the street markers, and they will be installed as they come in, not all at once, so we will be doing a time as they arrive. The committee also reviewed the first quarter parking revenue report. Everything looks good there, and the Easy Pay card is working well. Those of you who aren't familiar with Easy Pay card, it's an alternative form of payment. It's a prepaid card, and it is being well received.
Is it only at the Republic office that you
I
can
believe
get
that Joe, are we only making it available at the Maynard Street Public office? Fourth and William construction, phase 3. The steel is up, concrete is being poured, glass should be going up, and elevator installation should be starting the middle of this month. And the project is scheduled to be done in February of 17.
Great.
John, do you want to discuss your
Shared mobility.
your conference report?
Well, I can.
Okay.
So I went to the Shared Use Mobility Conference a couple weeks ago, and shared use mobility is the notion of those ways of getting around other than in your own private vehicle yourself. And in the sense, it can go all the way from bike share to public transit. So that it's one of those, I think, new terms that's being used in different ways by different people for different purposes. But for our purpose, I think it is mainly relevant to our parking system. And the reason I say that is that cars in the form of zip cars and Uber and Lyft and all these ways that now cars are being shared one way or another creates a system where people get dropped off and picked up as opposed to parking. And the conference was interesting in that there were folks from lots of public entities, including the federal government and MDOT and so forth, but there were folks from the auto companies, all the major auto companies, because they're looking at this in a big way. We're already familiar with Maven, GM's leg into this world. And there were lots of folks from various cities that are doing pilot programs in various forms, including Seattle, Pittsburgh, Indianapolis. Austin actually is looking at some interesting things with the apps for payments for using various forms of transit. Columbus is particularly, I hate to say it's Columbus, but they're particularly interesting because they were awarded $40 million by the federal government for a smart cities program, which isn't just about shared use. It's about advanced technology and autonomous vehicles and all kinds of things, but it's looking at the city of the future. So there were representatives from various cities. And then there are organizations, one, for instance, that Susan's familiar with, is called Transportation for America, and there are folks who started more in the public transit world, and now they're moving more into this whole world. So I think it's something that, what I say to people, my take on it, combining it with autonomous vehicles, it's on its way. The issue is how long it will take and what it will mean when to us. But I think it's important for us to be thinking about it pretty carefully, because when we start looking at long-term bonds for a parking structure, as an example, 30 years down the road, I think it's pretty fair to say we're going to have a pretty different transit system, and our urban infrastructure is going to potentially look quite different. And I think we got to look at it. What I'm hoping to do is get a copy of the keynote address that I hope to bring either to the operations committee or potentially, if it's interesting enough, to this meeting. The person who gave the keynote address is a woman named Robin Chase, who was a co-founder of Zipcar, and she has now sort of moved into sort of an advocacy position, I think, for this sort of world for many reasons, whether it's environmental, land use planning, all kinds of reasons to argue that going through to a shared use model is going to be the thing in the future and something we need to work towards. And she gave a really pretty, I felt, a very good keynote address, and so I'm hoping to get a copy of it and be able to share it with folks.
Great.
Thank you. Our next ops committee meeting is Wednesday, November 30th at 11 a.m.
Great. Executive committee, I'll take that. We met before our meeting today. Most of our discussion centered around the Fifth in Detroit pilot project, and most of what we discussed was pretty much voiced here. So anyone else in exec have anything that they talked about then that they wished that they had said earlier? Okay, I got all my points out. So next we meet every month before the general board meeting. So next up, new business. Susan already mentioned these things. You want me to just repeat them? I'll just repeat them. We have a DDA retreat Tuesday, November 15th, 1-5 p.m. at the Residence Inn. Don't come here. So hopefully everyone has that on the calendar. And a DDA city work session after in the new year, Monday, January 9th, 7 p.m.
At CTN Studio.
Okay, at CTN Studio. And I'm sure we'll have further reminders on that.
If I could comment on that,
Yes,
there's
please.
a requirement to have a joint meeting annually. I think we've done that maybe in a pro forma type way to meet the contract requirements, but not really to have a meaningful discussion. There are some concerns that will be addressed with, among other things, parking revenues and other plans. So it's a great opportunity to look into the crystal ball and also, though, address things that are of mutual interest both to the DDA as an entity in the city. So it's a good time to come with your creative lenses on.
Great. All right. Any other audience participation? No? Okay. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Support. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? We're adjourned.